Welcome back, everyone, to another interview here at Reimagine 2020 V4. I'm Roshan from MouseBelt, and I am one of your hosts for Reimagine. I'm so excited here to be joined by Reuben Yap, one of the co-founders of Zcoin. Reuben, thank you so much for joining here today. And how have you been in the past couple of months with the whole pandemic situation going on? How have your team coped with that situation?
I think I've been quite lucky. Since the pandemic, much obviously they're traveling, and on a personal note, I had to kind of be separated from my wife because she's a frontliner, she's a doctor, so that was kind of tough. My team is more or less keeping safe, but we have a team in Armenia, and they are currently engaged in a war with Azerbaijan, so that's kind of scary. And It's raising some eyebrows from myself. It's hard to concentrate on work when you have an ongoing war and a pandemic to deal with together. But we're doing as best as can be, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I know you. I know you all have a big team and people in all different types of regions. But nonetheless, let's start off with for our viewers, what exactly is Zcoin? There's a lot of privacy focused cryptocurrencies out there, different types of tokens. People are sometimes confused between the differences. So how long has Zcoin been out, and what exactly is some of the cool benefits you can do with it right now?
Right. So Zcoin, I think like launched its mainnet in 2016. I think probably the work for it probably started about like 1.5 years before that. So I think we launched in 28th of September 2016. So we've just passed our first halving, just a couple of months ago. So that's really exciting. And what we do in Zcoin is that we really believe in the importance of a cryptocurrency that is uncensorable and private, because we feel that if you want to have an alternate financial system, it has to be both private and for it to be uncensorable and unseizable. Privacy is also as important as well, especially with Bitcoin now. Every single transaction is kind of recorded permanently on the blockchain. Every single movement of a coin is traceable from its inception. And I think, what we do to provide privacy is we allow people to actually destroy their coins and at any time in the future to redeem them for brand new ones with no previous transaction history. So it's almost like wiping all the transaction history and getting like fresh virgin coins. And that's kind of the crux of our technology. And we use this, we all this technology is kind of homegrown, like it's like not a fork of something else, and we do have independent research, and we probably can talk a bit more about that later. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. I think that's one of the things that is unique. I've read a lot about, even for the employees and internal stakeholders, developers. You all offer burn and redeem different privacy models that you all have switched recently. And one thing that maybe you could talk about is I heard that you all kind of ditched the founders reward and you increased development for funding post halving, or at least that's what your plans are. So why did you take this approach as opposed to other protocols out there that still do keep that founder reward baked into the protocol? It seems that you all are working hard to support the community, keep them happy.
I think it has to be a balance, right? I mean, on the one hand, people unfortunately see founder rewards and stuff like that as a form of enriching the founders or the initial investors, and they don't see as like a pure community project. But at the same time, I mean, realistically, except for a very few handful of really old projects, and even those are suffering for funding, uh, to expect uh, like continued development and improvements on almost like a donation basis is also very difficult. I mean, like you take a look at Bitcoin, right? It's funded by a lot of like funds, but it's they may be pursuing their own interests, or even someone like Luke Dash Jr. He couldn't get funding. He's been like a core developer for so long, and he recently said like, I need to find additional work because the donations aren't enough. I mean, Bitcoin is like, the biggest cryptocurrency, and they have having problems funding. Green itself has Green, another privacy coin, they are also struggling. They have a handful of programmers and very reliant on donations that may or may not continue coming along. And that's a really bad way to attract talent who want job stability and things like that, right? I mean, I think that's something to be expected. If you want to attract talent, you have to be able to pay them. But at the same time, we also don't want it to be like, oh, we have full control of the funds. We're getting such a huge percentage, and we're just getting rich off it. And then what's the point of a decentralized coin, right? I mean, if it's so centralized among a few people that kind of control the whole direction of it, this coin is too reliant on a single entity or a single group of people. So we are trying to kind of like cut a balance between, let's say, continued funding and also decentralization, where we do have a development reward, but we actually intentionally cap ourselves. Like, if it goes over 100K, we need community approval. Like, if our
Mm.
total budget goes over 100K USD, and that additional goes to very, very specified things like audit, which, no one's going to complain about it. Very clear things that we can spend on, rather than like, oh, some other projects spending on crazy parties and fancy holidays and stuff like that. So I think we're trying to our best to continue developing as far as we can, without making sure that there's a check and balance and there's accountability for the core team and the community itself. So this is kind of like the balance. Hopefully, we can reduce the development reward further, but let's kind of take it like step by step. Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, I think that's awesome, and I think that it's also, we can also see a lot of the results of some of the actions you all have taken. I kind of want to get into some of the cool use cases that Zcoin is actually being used for around the world, especially in different foreign countries, right? So one of the things, here in the U.S. and even around the world, there's different elections going on that are super important. Now is a very essential time. I just think for the entire industry, really, not just crypto or blockchain. What I was talking to other speakers about as well was how can crypto kind of rebuild people's trust? I feel like a lot of people have lost that foundation of trust, right? They don't know what to believe. We saw these transitions from things like the newspaper to now you have things like Twitter. It's like more open source, kind of what you were talking about as well, community verification, kind of consensus driven, right? What my question to you is, I heard that Zcoin was actually used. I believe the blockchain was used, maybe not even the actual coin, right? I think it's really important to note that. But it was actually used for the election in Thailand in helping a democratic candidate get elected. Can you speak a little bit about that? How that came to be, and maybe what some of the results were. I think it's really cool that it was actually used. We're past some of the theoretical stages of some of these projects. Really exciting.
Sure. I mean, first of all, I mean, blockchain voting. Let me kind of like preface it with a disclaimer. Isn't the solution for all types of voting, right? Like, blockchain only serves as a database that can't be easily changed, and you can do it in a public fashion, and there's no central server. I mean, that's basically There's so many other issues about identity, about voter fraud, and that all needs separate systems to work. But in this particular scenario, it really, really fit. So they've just kind of give some background story. In 2018, Thailand, the Thai Democrat Party, which is one of the major opposition parties and used to be the ruling party as well, the party leader, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Abhisit, he was a former prime minister of Thailand, and his support was kind of like waning within the Thai Democrat Party. He was like seen as someone who is very Western educated and kind of out of touch with the Thai people and his party as well. Now, traditionally, although he was the leader of his own Thai Democrat Party, many people felt like maybe he was not the right person because he was like all bougie and upper class and stuff like that, right? And traditionally, what happened was that to select the leader or the candidate for the party, what would happen is just a bunch of big wigs in the upper councils would say, "All right, we like you, you become the leader." The average members do not have any say in that, right? So Abhisit wanted to really strengthen his basically to get a mandate to lead the party. And what he did is that he wanted every single Thai Democrat Party member to be able to vote for the party leader. So if he could say that if the party members vote for me directly, I have a very strong mandate to lead the party. And what happened was that, well, there's a lot of costs involved in when you're dealing with potentially like, millions of registered Thai Democrat Party members. How are you going to make this like cheap and trustable and satisfy all the other, potential candidates as well? And they actually wanted to go just the system first was designed to be for e-voting, but what happened was midway through, quite late into the thing, the candidates were like, well, if it's e-voting, who's going to host the server? How do I know that the database will not be tampered with? And how am I going to be certain that you're not going to rig the results and stuff like that? And this came from the other people who were vying for the political the top spot inside the political party. They did not trust the election commission. They're like, you can buy them off and whatnot. And then someone suggested, why don't we use blockchain? It's publicly verifiable. You can see everything, and why not? And everyone's like, all right, that sounds like a great idea. And that's how kind of like the whole blockchain come in. It was actually not designed to be a blockchain election system. It was designed to satisfy the concerns of the other stakeholders, the other members who were like did not really trust in e-voting, and they felt blockchain added to that. So we came in, or Poromin, our founder, he said like, look, he used to be like he used to work in the cyber warfare department in the army for Thailand, and of course he holds a lot of sway. And he was like, well, why don't you use Zcoin? It's a public blockchain, not controlled by any party. Everyone like can verify it. There's no like central server. Why don't you use it? And somehow everyone agreed. So what happened was 127,000 votes were casted nationwide on Zcoin's blockchain, and the results were not contested. Everyone was happy with the results, and Abhisit won, renewed his mandate. The party did not win the elections, although they did form the government, but I think it kind of demonstrated that in certain cases, blockchain voting it's not necessarily complex. It can be done, and it's kind of like a use case to tell other countries like, hey, it's not impossible. At least someone has done it on a nationwide level. This is possible, and I guess that's kind of it in a nutshell. But there were many, many other small little stories here and there that came about as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great the way you explained it, if I understand correctly, in that, you don't have to use blockchain at every level of the voting process, maybe not even to determine the results in this case, right? It was just to prove support for a mandate. And I think that's important to note, because in places like the US, we have a different election process. Everyone has a different election process in the world. So I think when we're thinking about some of these use cases, right, we actually have to dig in and see it from a worldwide view, and know that we can use this technology in different ways. There's some countries, like you just mentioned, like if you look at voting or even transferring money, which is what I'm about to get into in a second, where yeah, the results don't actually have to be reliant on something like a blockchain, but the point is it's just better than the existing system. Again, playing off of that, rebuilding people's trust. The question I wanted to get into now is, I know you have some interesting thoughts on PayPal's recent announcement that they're going to be integrating crypto into their Venmo wallet next year. And I heard that people are already using Zcoin to transfer funds in South Asia. So really, what my question boils down to is, why should we trust someone like PayPal, Venmo, where all your transactions are, in theory, public? You can see a whole feed. And what why should we trust them with crypto, or should we not? Yeah.
I mean, I think you can answer your own question. We shouldn't trust any kind of centralized body, right? I mean, PayPal is only kind of like, I mean, on the one hand, as I said, like, it opens it to crypto to like millions of merchants and consumers, and that's a good thing. But if you take a look at the fine print, you can't withdraw the crypto, and again, once you're in the PayPal system, every single transaction incurs a lot of fees, and that's kind of one of the things that crypto was designed to solve, which is the removal of intermediaries. But here you have an intermediary that's charging 2.9%, and yeah, it's not really for the people, or for like, I think it's more of like, how can PayPal protect its business and remain relevant, and therefore let's integrate crypto, but you don't really own the crypto. It's still kind of owned by PayPal, and I think they even recently there was some talks about them maybe acquiring BitGo. I think one of the largest custodians of Bitcoin and other kind of crypto assets. So I mean, I do think it's interesting, but at the same time, I think they was also talks about creating their own token, like Libra style, and I'm like, this is kind of like really the antithesis of what cryptocurrency is about. It should not be controlled by a single entity. It should not, like they should not be able to tell, like, okay, Ruben did this, and this, and this, and this, right? Like that's an awful lot of power that you're giving to a single organization. And that's just on the organization level. I mean, what's happening in PayPal is actually happening in many, many other countries. Like, okay, Facebook and its Libra project obviously is a data mine, and if you think about Facebook, it has citizens, it has its users, it has the location, it has connections with friends and what they do and everything. The only thing they're missing to be kind of like a virtual state is its own money. You give it Libra, it's almost like a country of its own, right? And without the kind of check and balances, you can't like vote out Mark Zuckerberg, right? Like you don't really have a say. Your data is just like there for everyone to take. And even like countries like China and all these other countries that are looking at CBDCs or central bank digital currencies, do you think they're actually doing it like, they'll say like, oh, you'll crack down on money laundering, or crack down, we can observe the economy, it's so much usefulness, but it is also very dangerous because it means that the government has full control to cut you off from the financial system whenever it deems you to be doing something not right. Like, and you mean you think, oh yeah, the government always acts well. I mean, first of all, it's kind of silly to believe that, governments would do things to stay in power, right? And if you do, like, let's say if you have a tyrannical government, how can you fight against a government that can cut you off your funds and financial, all that stuff? It really, really guides behavior. Like, just a very quick example, like in China, there was this MMA guy called Su Xiaodong, and he's a bit of an ass. He's an MMA fighter that challenges traditional kung fu artists and beats them up, basically. And I think one time he's quite a controversial character. He talks a lot of crap, and he offended one of these traditional martial artists who reported him to the authorities. And as a result, his credit score was demoted, and then he couldn't take a flight. He couldn't stay in a nice hotel because his status had gone down. Now think about how much power that is. Because let's say if I have a money that I can cut you off from the financial, I can cut you off from services. That is actually like a very dystopian future. And while we still have cash, while there is a separation of cash, individual private money, then it is very difficult for the government to do that. If you have stuff like Bitcoin, or you have stuff like Zcoin or whatever, it becomes very hard for the government to just have a monopoly, because if you're going to crack down so hard, there's this alternative financial system available. And I believe that's why what we are doing in the whole cryptocurrency sphere is to build like systems that don't require intermediaries, they have freedom of money, is really, really important. Not to enable illegal activity, but to act as a check and balance between the state and the individual and the citizen. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I
Very
mean,
sad.
I think what you just said, your whole little snippet will be replayed a couple of times, because it's so true what you just said in terms of, the whole concept of uh, like the virtual country. It's like what you said with Facebook, right? That might be their last missing element. If they get that, what else is missing? They have everything. They have the people. So that's pretty scary to think about. And that's why I'm also hoping that the open protocols, public blockchains do gain more adoption and acceptance. And I think we're still in a really good spot, right, to dethrone things like Bitcoin, or even a lot of these anonymity focused coins. It's all based on math, cryptography, technology, and even governments cannot really break that. They can do other things, like you said, but I think that's why education is really important. And I encourage people to go out and actually learn about the differences between the money that they're using right now, even things like Bitcoin and other alternatives. So, getting into some of this spooky stuff.
Before
Yeah, go ahead.
before
Go
I
ahead.
go into that, I really want to kind of like talk about a pet peeve of mine. Like, first of all, I
Go
really
ahead.
love Bitcoin. Bitcoin is one of those things that, I think it has the biggest chance to succeed as a cryptocurrency that's here to stay. I mean, like, Zcoin is still like really new, but you kind of know that Bitcoin will be here for the next at least 10 years, hopefully more,
Hmm.
right? But at the same time, people, there are this group of people that keep on talking about, oh yeah, Bitcoin is uncensorable, unseizable, and stuff like that. And I think they're kind of living in a kind of dream world, because I think that those days are numbered. Because take a look at who is amassing Bitcoin. I mean, North Korea has Bitcoin reserves. Iran has Bitcoin reserves. Venezuela is also talking about Bitcoin reserves. When would that threshold go past a certain point, especially when you have all this regulation around cryptocurrencies and whatnot, that they will be able to blacklist certain coins and whatnot, right? They say like anything that comes from like this group of coins is tainted, and therefore we wouldn't accept them, even if you got them legally and whatnot. We're going to freeze them and subject you to a lot of questions. That's not the very definition of uncensorable or unseizable, right? Like you can say it's unseizable, but if I know this address is held by you, I can point a gun to your head and you have to transfer it to me. I mean, I really think that people have to be realistic about what Bitcoin is and what Bitcoin is good at, and not necessarily say like, oh yeah, privacy coins are there to do illegal activity. We are there to really, really protect this unseizable, uncensorable aspect. And who knows, maybe one day Bitcoin might adopt the technologies that we built. So I don't think there's any necessary animosity that should be had against privacy coins or people who are trying to build these important technologies, because we need the technology to be there when we need it. And yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well said. And on that note, I mean, I'll ask you a quick question. So, even Bitcoin is going through some upgrades right now to try to bring more privacy and anonymity, more
Hmm.
pseudo anonymity. So, what do you think? Do you think that Bitcoin will get there if it scales on chain layer one, or do you think that a lot of these, privacy, the need for a lot of these privacy use cases will only come through like different other blockchains and layer two solutions, because
That's true.
it's hard to get that same level of security that you need just on chain, because it, like you said, it's so large.
Right. I mean, first of all, are you talking about Schnorr and Taproot?
Yes, that is what I'm
Yeah.
talking
So,
about. The recently this month, right? It's coming out, or it's
yeah,
getting
I mean,
announced.
if you take a look, Schnorr signatures do not really offer any privacy improvements whatsoever. The Taproot does, but it's kind of like Taproot only provides privacy as to the rules behind the transaction. Like for example, like whether this is a multi-sig transaction or not.
Hmm.
What are the, like, is this a 2 out of 3? Is this a 3 out of 5? Taproot kind of provides privacy as to the rules behind that. Like, is this a multi-sig transaction? Is this a normal transaction? But it doesn't do anything for transactional privacy. It doesn't do anything for amount privacy. And people who say that, oh yeah, Schnorr and Taproot solves everything, it's kind of like saying I'm naked, but I cover a leaf on my nipple, and like that's privacy. No, that, yes, it does provide some privacy, but it's nowhere near enough, right? It doesn't hide amounts, it doesn't hide the source, it doesn't hide the receiver, it doesn't do any of the really important things very well. Now, okay, Lightning, you may kind of say like, yeah, it's not on chain and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but there are many, many studies that actually show that currently, even with theoretical onion routing and all that stuff, it actually privacy may be quite bad, and Lightning is also kind of like designed in such a way to be a very hub and spoke system where groups of hubs, where because where all the linkages are coming in, they have also a lot of information as well. So unless you intentionally pick very suboptimal routes, and which would then you will stand out and you will also pay more. And even then there may be other ways. I mean, like Lightning is still relatively new. There may be this balance between privacy and whatnot, but it does seem that it's more moving into convenience. And even if you say Lightning takes off, you still need on-chain privacy to get into the Lightning network and off. So I do think it's like, rather than a patchwork of little solutions here and there is still value in pure privacy focused coins that's just like, look, we don't need to play with all these weird funny things. You just use it. You don't have to think about it, like Monero, like Zcoin, you just use it and you don't have to think too much. That's kind of like what we aim at, because like, try to use a coin join, try to use Samurai or Wasabi. There's so many things that you can do wrong. I mean, like, people who hack the exchanges don't even know how to launder their coins properly using Samurai or Wasabi. What more a regular Joe, right? So I think that's a lot to be said there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And even, some of the use cases we talked about earlier, it's like, I think a lot of people think that governments immediately dismiss privacy focused coins, but it's actually not the case. With the example you gave earlier, that you're actually working with other governments to
Right.
help them out. And I think there's nothing wrong with it, right? Once upon a time, encryption was illegal in the world,
Correct.
and we had different people, Edward Snowden, the cypherpunk. This whole movement is still has those same roots. So I'm glad you kind of spoke to that a bit, because I do agree in that sense. Like we shouldn't in our industry, for the new people entering in, we shouldn't try to take one thing like Bitcoin and try to make it fit every single use case. That doesn't apply in any other use case in any
Correct.
other part of the world or anything else, right? But what I do want to ask you about now, we're kind of talking about some spooky stories. So in how long have you been in the crypto industry? And do you have any spooky or scary stories that you've encountered, in your journey leading up to just where we are right now talking to you in 2020? What a weird year it's been.
Well, I've been involved in crypto maybe since early 2013, late 2012. I think I was the first merchant in my country, Malaysia, to actually accept Bitcoin. I actually started a VPN service in 2007, and that's like, like how kind of my journey into privacy and all of that. But I talked about spooky. Well, I don't know whether it's spooky or scary, but Zcoin went through a lot. Like, within, I think, 1 month from launch, our co-founder ran away with all our seed money. We were left in the dust, and then 1 month later we got hacked really badly. We have so many like really bad stories, but I felt that with every step of the way we just got stronger and stronger and stronger, and I kind of it's a testament to our resilience. But it was really tough. Like when I joined Zcoin, although I have the labor co-founder and I kind of like built the project up to what it is right now. I actually started as a community manager. I was a lawyer for 10 years prior to joining Zcoin, and I was like, I've done like I by that time I had done like so much in the space. Like I've done mining, I lost money on exchanges, we got hacked, and did all like all the stuff that you could do, use local bitcoins and Polo, all the all everything, right? And I wanted to know how it was like behind the scenes, and therefore in Zcoin, there was only two people then. One which was Paramin, the other guy was called Gary, and they didn't have anyone else. And I was like, hey, why don't I come in, be a community manager and explain what you guys do in a very simple manner rather than in geek speak. And that's how I came on and kind of slowly progressed into this role of like kind of like the project lead or so. But the first kind of blow was really really bad. I mean, like, the founders reward was based on the seed investment that we got, right? And it wasn't a lot of money. This was like pre-ICO. I think it was maybe 100,000 US dollars, which in 2 days it's like, well, you just spend it like that. That can't even get you a good exchange listing, right? And the co-founder ran away with all the money, and basically we were left with almost nothing to begin with, and yet we still had to continue paying the seed investors because that was what was the agreement about, right? And one of our seed investors was Roger Ver, so his support at that time was, I think that time he was like known as Bitcoin Jesus before the whole, now people see him in a different light. And I'm okay with him, but he was then a good guy. Everyone loved him. So yeah, so that was a really hard one. And the second, I guess the big one was when we got one. There was a flaw in the cryptography of Zerocoin, which was the first privacy protocol that we use, and it was not an easy one. Like it actually kind of existed since we ever launched, but it was only kind of found out like in 2019. So it was 2018 to 2019. Yeah, I think early 2019. And that was really rough because this guy, he was a hacker, and he went by the moniker Pink Panther. So it was quite interesting. And he exploited the code and managed to inflate coins out of thin air. And can you imagine, like, you know, how do we deal with such a difficult thing to do, right? And I'm really glad that we managed to work together with the mining pools, with the exchanges, to first of all lock down the damage, and then after that, we luckily managed to. We had a good enough team to actually identify the flaw. I mean, we had other projects that were also using our technology. They were unable to find the flaw, but we had cryptographers and stuff that really dug into it. So we managed to patch it and actually completely replaced Zero Coin in 4 months with a totally new privacy protocol without trusted setup called Sigma, which is what we're currently using right now and going to be moving away in a 1 month or two. So yeah, I mean, not not so sure how much more I can say about that, but it was really interesting because the hacker actually did help us later on. He actually contacted us and said like, hey, yeah, I hacked you guys, but um I actually really believe in what you guys are doing, so I'm gonna help you guys, identify additional flaws. And instead of hacking you guys can pay me a bounty. And that was like, at the same time, it was like, oh man, you really like made a lot of money off our hack, but at the same time now it's quite touching that you, instead of like destroying us completely, you actually believe in what we're doing and think what you're doing is really cool. So kind of like bittersweet, but that's a really interesting story. And Pink Panther, if you're out there, I mean, yes, you're probably very rich now, but thank you so much, and keep those bug reports coming. We really appreciate them. Like,
Yeah, I really appreciate your openness and your attitude towards these things, because I think that's another thing that people get wrong in our industry, so to speak. All of us who are living and kind of breathing it, right? Like, it's great to talk about these hacks and different things that happen. Also, it's only in our industry that hackers would help and return the money. One thing I think I just want to go off what you said is important to note is like the reason why even hackers are interested in some of these protocols and projects, it has nothing to do, I think, with so much as the actual security or how much effort is being put, but really it should actually speak to the value, right? Hackers go after honeypots, and for anyone that doesn't know, honeypots are like large, lucrative, I'll just call them, buckets of money or opportunities. And crypto is there's honeypots everywhere, right? When you think about how much money is in some of these exchanges, how much money is in some of these protocols, DeFi protocols that spin up overnight, right? So I would say that I'm not saying that hacks are good or they should happen, but if they are happening, you can't ignore that there is value there, right? Hackers wouldn't care if there wasn't any value, but I'm glad that those spooky stories turned out to be good. I mean, at the end of the day, even some of these hackers, they're not out to like destroy crypto or anything like that, or even I think destroy a lot of things. There's just a lot of smart people just taking advantage of opportunities. And I want to remind everyone that Bitcoin is only 10 years old. A lot of these projects are only a couple years old, and they're all open source, distributed. You have to worry about different things, like you said, right? All the stakeholders, the miners, the people, the cryptography. When you compare that to traditional finance, something like PayPal, they can just roll out a centralized solution with all the power and might they have, like over a year. It's pretty easy, and but you don't get the same levels of control, decentralization. It's the same thing over again, right? I want to ask you, what are you most excited about kind of going into next year, like just everything you've experienced this year, you and your team. Are there any changes that you're thinking of making as opposed to your plan? I know you're launching Atlantis, the test net, or is it the main net launching soon? Pretty excited about that. To kind of end things off, I want to kind of hear about that. And are you looking for more developers? What can people expect in the next couple months or next year or so?
right. Well, before I go into that, I just wanted to add one small thing because I think it's really important that people don't know a lot about. Bitcoin itself, despite so many people looking at it and being the most valuable cryptocurrency and so many eyes on it, had two inflation bugs. One of which was the value overflow incident way back when I think trillions of coins were created, but then the ecosystem was so small it was easy to reverse. And just as recently as in I think 2018, there was actually an unexploited bug, but it was found by a Bitcoin Cash guy that if they had been exploited, I am not sure how they would have rectified it, whether they would still be only 21 million coins or so, because it's so difficult to say, oh, yeah, I'm going to blacklist. Who are you going to hurt? And I just wanted to show that it's so hard to get things right. Eventually, we'll get there, but it is an iterative process. All software has bugs, and we kind of have to embrace it and take the right steps. Like right now, yes, we've gone through like multiple audits and all that sort of stuff, but it's even then, it's not. It is impossible to say something is totally like unhackable or bug free. It is all about building and maturity, and people have to understand that rather than just like Schadenfreude or like, oh, you got hacked and you got hacked and stuff like that. But okay, going back to your question, what am I most excited about? Of course, Lelantis, which is our next gen privacy protocol. It's actually pretty breakthrough. It uses a zero knowledge proofs without what we call a trusted setup, no exotic math, and is even Monero uses one of the primitives that we use to is as a potential candidate to scale Monero, which is called Triptych as well. And we already have it working on the testnet. I think we launched the testnet maybe about a week ago, and we hope to launch the mainnet binaries in maybe a month or so, and then have activation in an additional 4 to 6 weeks. So we're looking at a very early January release. We could have released at end of December, but we want people to enjoy the holidays, so we're probably releasing in very early Jan. And on top of that, we actually rebranding, so there'll be no more Zcoin. There'll be a new name, and I think it's a great time to rebrand. I mean, Zcoin was great. We were named after the zero coin protocol that we use, but unfortunately, even 4 years from now, people still think that we are related to Zcash or that we are a fork of Zcash. And um, it's really funny. Like in China, the Chinese words for Zcash is 大零币, which means big zero coin, and Zcoin is 小零币, which is small zero coin. So we don't want to be the small zero coin anymore. We're gonna have something totally new, and we're really excited about this whole rebrand. And it ties in with our launch of Atlantis and everything. We're going to slowly transition into a privacy by default model. We have all these DeFi integrations that are happening right now, and yeah, we're going to have instant private transactions, 51% attack, like proof, like you can't attack us with 51% attacks all in the next few months. So we're really excited about that, and hopefully as the price improves, we can definitely expand our team. We are really hoping to expand our team to accelerate development, and we're really focused on having, now that we've got like the foundation and the pillars of Zcoin, like privacy and all these protections, we're all about usability now. We want instant sync wallets, not just like light wallets, but like using zero knowledge proofs that have instant sync, good mobile experiences. Is all about utility and user friendliness now. So that's kind of what's on our plate for the next year or so, and it's a really packed one.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting to talk to you now because I believe in a couple of days or in a couple of weeks that rebrand is going to
You
happen.
revealed, yeah.
So yeah, it's exciting to talk to you and see the launch of Atlantis. To end things off, actually, I find it interesting you talk so much about zero knowledge proofs because I was talking to co-founder of Mina, who was previously the Coda protocol, and he was talking about the exact same thing. Can you explain to people in a more understandable way, why are zero knowledge proof so exciting and something they can kind of understand? Because most people just do not understand how you can prove something without knowing a entity or body behind it, because our world is literally built upon knowing. Like we verify information and things based on people behind it or entities behind it, right? It's like you don't believe the transaction unless it came from PayPal, but then when you really dig deep into it, it's like they can change the transaction, all these things. Anyway, I'll let you that the last thing I just want our viewers to end it off, like maybe we can
What's
help break
zero
down zero
knowledge
knowledge
proof,
proofs a
right?
bit better, because I want people to be a little more excited about it because they don't understand it.
All right. I mean, like zero knowledge proofs can prove all sorts of different things, right? So they can prove all sorts of statements. For example, in zero coin, or like in what Zcoin is doing, we are proving that we are one of the people that burnt the coins. When we redeem the coins, you have to prove that you burned the coins without showing uh, which burn was yours, right? You prove that I have burned the coins, but I'm not telling you which one I'm of the
Oh,
burns am I. And that's a specific type of zero knowledge proof. If I were to bring it to like a very easy analogy to understand, I would say like, okay, let's say if you go to a fun fair, right? And you buy a ticket at the counter, you give them the money, you get a receipt. You go to the turnstile, and you show the receipt to the person knows that you have paid money. He's not going to ask you which exact notes did you actually pay to get this particular receipt that you have the right to enter the park. He sees from the receipt that that is enough proof for him to let you through. In a way, a zero knowledge proof is kind of like generating a receipt that does not need to show like all the individual notes that come or the individual statements that go in it. But in it itself, people say, "Oh yeah, I look at the receipt, I know it's legit. I'm going to let you through." And I think that's a not 100% accurate, but I think it's an easy way to kind of explain how a zero knowledge proof might kind of work in the real world, right? Like to say that it's kind of like a receipt that I have done something without actually exactly showing you what I did for it. There's no one's going to ask you like, oh, did you pay through your credit card? Or do you pay through your cash and whatnot? Is that I know you have the right to enter. I'm letting you through. So I think that's an easy way to explain it.
Yeah, no, that's a great explanation. I mean, I haven't heard many. It's so hard to explain how to prove something, without actually showing. That was a great explanation. Ruben, I'm so glad I was able to talk to you today. And for everyone out there, please, check out the rebrand of Zcoin, Atlantis launching soon. I'm really excited to have more privacy focused protocols and tokens in the world we live in now, virtual world. I think it's going to keep going. Reuben, thank you so much for joining me. And everyone, I'm your host, Roshan, and I'll let you all tune back into another interview here at Reimagine 2020 V4. Thank you.